up, guys? This is KDCloudy, and I was in Bangalore for a few days, and I had tons of fun. And I watched two movies because, of course, the first one was Pathan again, and I watched it in Swagat Cinemas, which is India's biggest LED Onyx screen, and it was a pretty interesting experience. And yeah, a video on that is gonna come soon. And the second one, of course, Titanic, which I watched in IMAX in PVR Nexus Koramangala, which was PVR's first IMAX in India, established in 2012. So yeah, overall it was a pretty good experience. Now, Titanic is an older movie, right? It released in 1997 for its original theatrical run. So in 2012 it was remastered in 3D for the first time ever. Then in 2017 for the 20th anniversary it was remastered in Dolby Vision, and now in 2023 for the 25th anniversary it was remastered in 4K 3D Dolby Vision, Dolby Atmos, and what else? Yeah, high frame rate. So yeah, now ironically I did not watch the film in any of those formats except for 3D. Now, the reason why I did that was because I basically wanted to experience Titanic as it released in 1997. Now, that might seem like a whole lot of bullshit, but yeah. Now, filmmakers like George Lucas and James Cameron have the habit of, constantly modifying and changing their film after it's been released. And in that process, the original version of the film kind of gets lost. And now, see, I won't ever be able to experience Titanic on a 35mm film print in a theater like it was in 1997, but this is as close as it can get. You know what? Despite all that, it was a pretty good experience, and I'll tell you why. Titanic is not really a tech demo like Avatar is. Avatar is more like a visual masterpiece. It's more like I consider that as a visual demo. Titanic isn't one of those films. When you watch Titanic, you're totally immersed in the story. And I usually look at the screen like a hawk of, being nitpicky about all the technical details, but I forgot about all that while I was watching this movie. And that's slightly hypocritical of me since I don't do that for all films, but yeah, this movie you can enjoy even if you watch it in a normal theater. So yeah, that's my summary, but don't click away just yet. One thing I would like to talk about is the aspect ratio. Now, this movie in IMAX was presented in the 2.4:1 aspect ratio, which was the scope aspect ratio, which means it had black bars on the top and the bottom. Now, it might be a huge deal breaker to you, and it might be really disappointing, and it was slightly disappointing for me as well. But then there is the argument to be made that it was shot in 1997 in 35mm film and not with IMAX cameras and whatnot. And that makes sense until you look at the clips from the 2012 remaster, and you can see that James Cameron presented that version of the film in a taller 1.78:1 open matte aspect ratio. Now, they went back to 2.40 for some reason, and I don't know why. But you know what? After watching the film in theaters, in scope, and the open matte clips, I think scope just works better for this film because it's an emotional drama. It's not really a visual masterpiece, like I said, it's visually really good, but the taller aspect ratio doesn't add much. It's more like expanding your periphery vision, but it doesn't really add much. And the composition, the framing, and all those things, they just look better in 2.40. But you know what? I would have appreciated having a taller aspect ratio. But again, if they just went with the way it was released in 1997, I can kind of respect that. Now, moving on to the colors were really good, and I really liked the remastered look of the film. There was not one single speck of film grain on screen. I don't know what kind of DNR they applied, what kind of noise reduction they applied, but the film looked like as if it was shot yesterday. And it was really sharp. Even in a 2K resolution, it looked pretty sharp, and there was a lot of detail. Now, I was watching this film after a long time, like 6-7 years, and I've watched it for the first time on a computer screen. And I remember the film having sort of like a hazy texture to it, and all that was gone. And now this version of the film has a very squeaky clean image, and I guess they were trying to sort of replicate the original 35mm print look from the 1997 release, and that also explains the aspect ratio. Now, talking about the 3D, well, I would have preferred to watch a 2D version because that's how it looked in 1997. But anyway, 3D was the only option, and it was good 3D, like Cameron's 3D always is. And I've made a totally separate video about how Cameron does 3D. You can check that one out, and this one falls in line with what I said in that video. And also, speaking of 3D, this movie was also in 48 frames per second high frame rate, but I did not watch it in 48 frames per second. And I'm kind of glad that I didn't, because the original version of the film in 1997 was in 24 FPS. And a movie like this, an emotional drama, a movie like this, I don't know how it would have benefited from 48 FPS. And what I've read on Twitter and on Reddit, it seems like there weren't that many scenes in high frame rate, so it looks like I wasn't missing out on much. So yeah, that was basically it. It was a pretty cool experience watching Titanic, such an iconic movie on the big screen, and I really liked it. And again, talking about the theater was also pretty good. The screen was big enough, bigger than the IMAX with laser in Delhi, but not as big as the one in Noida or the one in Chennai, but it was moderately sized. And yeah, the seats were fine and the interior was fine as well. And I'm surprised at how well it has held up despite like 11 years of service. So that's some pretty good maintenance over there. And yeah, so total I have now visited 10 IMAX theaters in India, and I want to increase that list over the course of this year. And yeah, that's basically it. Thank you so much for watching. Look out for my video on Onyx and how that technology works. And yeah, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Cheers.